I'd like to start the March 4th meeting of the Revere Conservation Commission. First item on the agenda is a roll call. Member Joseph LaValle. Here. And I'd like to welcome our newest member, Mr. Nicholas Malason. Present and accounted for, Nick? Yeah. Long-time member, Vincent Camerata.
Present.
Member Ann Raponi.
Here.
Member James Cerboni. Here. And I'm Andrew DeSantis, Chairman.
Point of personal privilege, Andy, please.
Go ahead.
On behalf of the entire committee, I'd like to welcome Mr. Melanson on board. Wish you best of luck. We're glad to have you join our group.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Well spoken, Ann.
And I believe we have another new member that'll be joining the board shortly, Mr. Vincent Laurier.
Mr. Who?
Vincent Laurier of Dale Street.
Is he going to be here today?
No, I don't know if the council's acted on his appointment yet and hasn't been sworn in.
Mr. Laurier.
Laurier.
Laura. Okay. We'll handle that one he arrives, I'm sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Andy.
So, okay, present. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of January 7th, 2015. I realized when I was doing the minutes for February meeting, we didn't vote approval of the minutes of January. I reviewed the transcript on Revere TV, and we did not do it. So, motion to approve minutes. Motion by Member LaValle. Seconded by Member Vincent Camerata. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Voted in the affirmative. Next item is approval of the minutes of February 4th, 2014. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Motion by Member Ann Raponi, seconded by Member Joseph LaValle to approve the minutes of February 4th, 2015. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Vote in the affirmative. The next item on the agenda is a vote, a request for a minor amendment, DEP file 0610652, Green Street Headwall and John Avenue drainage repairs for the city of Revere. Magdalena Lofstead of CDM Smith is here to speak on the amendment. Yeah, why don't you come up, Magdalena, just to explain. What about it then?
It's on. I'm sorry, I can't see it. It's on. Sorry.
I'm not letting you drive home.
My name is Magdalena Lofstead, CDM Smith. I'm here on behalf of the City of Revere. We're requesting a minor modification to the existing order condition 063-0652.
Andy, I think she should talk.
Yeah, if you could, Magdalena, make sure the green light's on and talking to the microphone.
Okay. So,
Well, I think you don't even really need, if you just want to put that, if you bring the chair and put it against the podium.
so the existing
Everybody here is going to know where the streets are, so if you just talk about the streets, we should be all set.
The existing
Talk right into the mic.
The existing
Yeah.
order of conditions was for the closed-circuit television inspection and cleaning of approximately 3,300 linear feet of drains, and rehabilitation of the head wall at Mills Avenue and Johns Avenue. So since they did the CCTV inspections, we're requesting an amendment for the CIPP, the trenchless lining of about 3,350 linear feet of drains up in the Mills Avenue area, and the streets are shown here. And as you're aware, I know all the work is within existing streets. Access to the drains will be via the existing manholes. The outfalls will be plugged. So because it's part of the curing process, they may have to use hot water or steam to make sure that there will be no discharge into the river. And then the other amendment modification that we're asking for is the order condition that was issued for the rehabilitation of the Johns Avenue head wall. They were proposing just to grout. I have a picture of it. Should I show you? The grout between the stones.
Yeah, I had distributed to everybody what you had sent me, Magdalena, so they already have it.
So it turns out, upon further investigations of that dilapidated head wall, that would not be sufficient. So they're in the bid, they're doing like two bid alternates. So the one is to remove the head wall and restore it to existing conditions within the existing footprint, basically, and line about 25 feet of the pipe that extends, out beyond the street. And the other bid alternate is to, instead of restoring it to the way it is to do a stone revetment. So it wouldn't extend any further out onto the beach. So it would just be a sort of a rip-rap slope, as opposed to what is there now.
Why are there two options for bids?
I think it's because it makes more sense to do as a long-term, for more long-term stabilization, is to do the revetment.
Then why shouldn't that be the only bid option?
Because I think there was some possibly neighborhood concerns that they wanted it to be restored in place because the area might be used by residents. That's what I think.
Excuse me, are you talking about the location?
Yeah, that's a little, yeah.
I guess,
Mr. Chairman?
there are no residents here, I guess, to comment on
Can't hear what he's saying.
the alternative
Pick up,
bid
please.
option, so,
Go a little.
it's not our jurisdiction really to specify what bid option is preferable. Both are acceptable with regard to the Wetland Protection Act. But,
I think the other concern also, because this structure is subject to Chapter 91 jurisdiction, and the licensing process is simpler if you restore a structure in kind, although the stone revetment wouldn't extend any further seaward into their jurisdiction. That might be another concern. So that's why they left, because we're still going through that process with Chapter 91. So that's why they left it as, two bid alternates, if that makes sense.
yeah, it just seems to me that the revetment is going to be entirely different than what's there now, so you mentioned there are concerns from abutters with regard to not replacing it in kind. I haven't heard any of those concerns.
I haven't heard any concerns either about replacement, but I also don't have an issue with the changes they're proposing.
I just had a question.
Ask your question.
It's just a curious question. We had hearings on the head walls, January 7th meeting. How come that particular head wall was not brought up at that time? It's just a curious question. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I believe that was.
We had a hearing on the head walls.
It
right?
was
It was
included.
included,
Huh?
but.
They were gonna
Wasn't
grout it.
included?
Yeah, it was.
They were gonna grout it.
They were just
Huh?
gonna grout.
They were gonna try and mortar it
Okay.
to hold it together, but after further looking at it, they didn't think that was really sustainable, that it
Okay.
would last over a lengthy period of time.
Okay, well, that's why I asked. All right, thank you.
So that's why they came back, and I saw this as a minor amendment. I didn't see the need to reopen the public hearing.
May I, Andy? I have a
Go right
question.
ahead.
I actually have another curious question. As I read this, your letter here today, as I reviewed it, I think I found the answer to my question, and perhaps you can confirm that. Linear feet, it specifies 1,450 linear feet.
She's talking about the cured in place now. We were just talking about the head wall, so you're talking about.
I want to, I'm going back to the previous paragraph, if I may.
Sure.
Okay, it specifies 1,450 linear feet, and then it goes on to say there's a 10-inch pipe, and then there's a 12-inch pipe, and then I'm trying to decipher why the linear feet was so much larger, and I think I came up with the answer. I guess they go by the circumference of the pipe itself. Am I right on that one? The 24-inch diameter pipe is
Well, those are
is a
different
larger in,
those are
is
larger
linear
pipes.
feet. Am I right on that?
Well, those are larger pipes, and there's just,
Linear feet is the length.
The length of it, what you're thinking about is the amount of area, the circumferential area of the pipe. So if you get a 12-inch pipe that's 10 feet long, and you get an 8-inch pipe that's 10 feet long. This is actually a fabric-type material that goes into the pipe, and then they impregnate it with a resin, and that makes it hard and makes it a good pipe.
Stops the pipe from leaking.
Oh, I know what,
So it'd
I
be
know
more
what you're
fabric
doing.
required
You're
for
actually
the 12-inch
cleaning,
pipe.
you're cleaning the pipe and
They do that first.
putting
yeah.
new material.
Called an inverted sock method.
Okay.
It looks like a sock that goes down the pipe with the closed end. They put the resin in it and they heat it up. And once it cures, and they open up the end of the sock. So it's,
Thank you for the explanation.
thank you, Andy.
I have a question about that as well. You mentioned it, I'm familiar with cured in place liners, and you can use either steam or hot water, but I'm not familiar with the containment method. If you do use hot water, what happens to the water after it comes in contact with the resin? I know the resin's on the outside of the liner, so it's basically only in contact with the pipe itself. But if you were to use water, what happens to that water? Does it
I
get
believe
just discharged?
I believe that it has to be discharged into holding tank, but Andy, you could correct me.
I think you're correct. Even discharging when they do sanitary sewer line, MWA has issues with certain types of chemicals that are used. It would only allow certain types, so you would have to put it in a holding tank rather than
That's what I'm
letting it
saying,
go
if it's-
out to a wetland resource for sure.
Right, you can't just discharge it, so you have to have some,
So that's part in our specifications?
okay, but you just specified either steam or water, so.
Yeah, Magdalena is not an engineer. She's a wetland scientist, so. Trade a little bit
I'm familiar
outside
with
of
the process. I know it's not as simple as it sounds. It's often difficult, especially for small diameter pipes. So I'm just curious what's going to happen with the water after the fact.
I know for a fact that they're not allowed to discharge it. It has to go into a holding tank.
Okay, so that should be a condition.
I wasn't planning on rewriting the order of conditions, where it's just a minor amendment I don't think that was put in the original order.
Okay.
Commissioner Lavelle?
Hi.
Lavelle?
A couple of quick questions. Who's doing the lining? Has that contract been given out yet?
The bids were closed February 26th, and the contract will be awarded April 1st, so no, it has not been issued yet.
Okay. Second question, I'm looking at the first photograph that you gave us, and I'm looking at all of the stone that's in there now, the rubble. And I was wondering, number one, if you have any idea what the origin of that stone is. It doesn't look like it's native to the area. It looks like it was brought there. And are you making any attempt to cleaning any of that out before you finish the project? It just seems to me that it might be something that gets on a strong tide or a storm, gets pushed back up into that pipe and cause a problem. So I was wondering if there's going to be any attempt to get rid of that. And again, in your research, when you were doing this project, I'm curious if you found out where the origin of that material was from.
I don't know the origin of the material. I don't believe that they're proposing to removing that stone, but if that's something that the commission would like us to do, I suppose it could be a condition.
Judging from the awful winter that we've just had, and in particular, the second half of the storms coming in from the northwest, which would be really pushing this material directly into the street. When you think about it, because that's coming over the marsh. I'm wondering it might not be a bad idea to have some of that rubble cleared, no?
Well, clearing the rubble, you're going to expose the shoreline to more erosion.
Yeah, you don't know what's underneath. There's no sand there, I don't think.
I don't think there is either.
No.
Yeah, and keep in mind, one of the options for the bidders is to just have a revetment wall, which is just an abundance of rocks. So they would probably
larger
include the
size
old
stones.
stone along with any
Now
new stone.
the other possibility is a grate,
Is it what?
a perpendicular grate, just so that no, stones of good size.
So nothing goes back inside.
So it can go like
Yeah,
not a flap, but just like a sewer grate, only perpendicular rather than, up in a vertical, I should say.
yeah, you could keep some of the larger rocks out with
Yeah.
something like that. You wouldn't
And
keep
it
the
would
small
also make it easier to clean, too. I mean, if it really built up against a wall, you could just go from the outside and pull it back off,
Well,
rather than if it worked its way up the pipe a bit.
that's true. Yeah, maybe we should do a site visit when the weather clears before construction starts, if you're not planning on awarding before April anyways.
Right,
Then,
yeah, construction probably would start May 1st.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And if there's any other issues, we can talk to the engineer about them and convince them that we think that's in the best interest. But as far as a minor amendment, I think we should just.
Well,
vote it.
maybe you should mention to the engineer my concerns, and maybe they'll brainstorm and come up with something.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Anything else? We have a vote on the minor amendment? The motion? Do we have a second?
Thank you.
You're welcome, Magdalena. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Vote. Okay, so I'll write up, Magdalena, the vote and the concerns, and get that off. So then we can figure out a good time if snow ever melts.
Mr. Chairman, no order of conditions, you just remind.
No,
All
I
right.
saw it as a minor amendment. so,
Okay, all right,
You know,
thank-
but we may want to change that come the site visit.
Okay, thanks, Andy.
Next item on the agenda is a public hearing for DEP file number 0610656, Beverly Street, construction of two duplex residences on Beverly Street by Humphrey Street LLC. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to open.
Chairman,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Vote in the affirmative. Peter,
Good evening.
welcome.
Good to see you again.
You too.
For the record, my name is Peter Rogan. I'm with Hayes Engineering, and I'm here this evening to present this project on Revere Street. First of all, I think there's a couple of bookkeeping items. I did note that we were assigned a file number, and then I have some green cards and proof of mailing. I think the green cards have probably been somewhat delayed on this by difficulties with the postman.
Yeah, I get my mail maybe twice a week.
Maybe.
I don't want it at all, it's mainly bills.
I also have, those are the proof of mailings that you get. The white ones are the proof of mailing that you get at the time. Actually, I think the proof of mailing is adequate for notice, but
You also supplied an affidavit, didn't you?
oh yeah, we supplied an
Yeah,
affidavit with the application.
Yep.
If other green cards come in, we can send them along. I'm here this evening representing William Gateman, who's with me this evening, who is the principal in Humphrey Street LLC, who has purchased this site. This site is a site that came before the Revere Conservation Commission some many years ago, and after a lot of consideration and discussions with Army Corps of Engineers and quite a bit of looking into it, it received an order of conditions in 2007. Unfortunately, due to the economic times and probably the applicant that owned the site at the time, nothing ever went forward with the construction. And even though it had the benefit of those two Permanent Extension Act extensions, it still ended up expiring. So we're here with a new filing. From an environmental standpoint, the project is largely the same as it was then. There's a fairly large area in the center of these two lots, which is isolated land subject to flooding. It's about 6,000 square feet. And it's the area that's kind of shaded in blue and from time to time ponds, and it's largely Phragmites. It's largely grown with wetlands plants. There is also the rest of the site that's in the land subject to coastal storm flowage, and that's about 10,584 square feet. Because of the wetland resources on the site, the decision was made back, we looked at a couple of alternatives, but the decision was made that we would propose to construct these dwellings on stilts. And so we've got the same proposal now. There's going to be a series of what will probably be helical piles which get screwed into the ground, usually by a backhoe type device. And then on that there'll be a frame, and the current proponent of the project proposes to put pre-constructed units on a frame on that platform. The site, as I said, from an environmental standpoint is the same. It's the same site and it has the same resources. But it is a different project from the proposed construction standpoint. First of all, these units that you see here are considerably smaller than what was previously proposed to be on the site. Each unit's about 1,500 square feet, 36 feet wide and 42 feet deep. And it's also differs from the last project in that at the time we came before the city of Revere, there were issues as far as sewer backups in the area. It's our understanding now that those problems are at least largely solved, if not totally solved. And there had been a requirement prior to have some emergency storage on site as far as sewage flow is concerned. It's my understanding that that now no longer is a requirement. So the project differs in those two aspects from the one that was done, submitted the last time, and I think both are a plus from an approval standpoint. As far as the parking spaces are concerned, we're not proposing to pave the parking spaces. We're proposing to just have them be gravel, and the land is quite flat, so we'll just come in, do a minor amount of grading in each of these parking space areas, and put actually crushed stone. I described it as gravel, but we're really talking about crushed stone in the parking spaces. I think that describes the project, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission might have, and I'm sure my client would be willing to as well.
What I'd like to do at this point is anybody else in the audience, I see Councilor Powers, the ward councilor, who would like to speak on the project before we take any questions from commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. In my opinion, this project hasn't changed one bit. The area hasn't changed. We talk about sewage backups, the sewers on Beverly Street, the sewer covers still raised from 6 to 8 or 9 inches off the ground when you get surcharging down there. There was some work done down there on drainage, which I think it was $800,000 or $900,000 was spent down there by the prior administration. The people down there have suffered year after year after year. They finally had a little relief down there with the drainage work that was done in the catch basins, and we enlarged the capacity of the trenches, and but that's just a little. It doesn't solve the problem. The problem down there is sewerage. When the sewage gets high down there, it surcharges. I've seen it myself, coming out 6, 8 inches out of the sewer. You know, the other issue, and I realize that has nothing to do with you, but it's something I think we should keep in mind, is density. Density, we're talking about 4 units down there, two-family units. That's more cars coming into the neighborhood, which is already impacted heavily. It's more kids going into our school system. Probably another 8 kids going into our school system at a cost of probably $80,000 or $90,000 to the city of Revere. What are we going to get for taxes down there? $10,000, $12,000 from both of the units? So we're operating with a $70,000, $80,000 net operating loss to begin with. But the real issue here, although that's an issue, the real issue is the impact on the neighborhood. The people that live in that neighborhood down there have been subjected to flooding year after year after year. We finally made some progress down there with the new drainage system, but that doesn't solve the sewerage system down there. That's a real serious problem. I was down there, I got a call 3 months ago at 4:30 in the morning to get down there. Ellerton Street, from York Street down to the Marsh, Arcadia Street, from York Street down to the Marsh, was flooded, probably 7, 8, 9 inches of water on the streets, going into the people's homes down there. This is not a good project. This is a bad project for that neighborhood and for the city of Revere, and I would ask this board to vote against it this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Anybody else?
My name is Tony Tiuli. I am an abutter to this property. I've been here 50 years. I'm afraid that we'll be flooded out even more. Even though Arcadia Street and Ellerton and these other streets that Councilor Powell mentioned, the catch basins and the storm sewers were renewed, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, for which we're very grateful because it's really helped. Beverly Street has no storm water drains. There's no catch basin on Beverly Street. Every single catch basin on Oak Island Street has been inoperable for 20 years. I've called the mayor, I've called the, the DOC, DCR, trying to get some action just on Oak Island Street. So all the water that comes down Oak Island Street goes into Beverly and Arcadia Street. I'm also concerned, as an abutter, that if there are two houses, whatever size, put beside me, they're going to raise the water table, and the water's going to come into my house. As it is, I have a sump pump that runs regularly. Some of you may remember a couple of weeks ago that a hydrant was knocked over at the corner of Oak Island Street and North Shore Road. The water continued to run overnight at least, because when I got up in the morning and looked out, there was a sea in this particular area of Beverly Street. The water was coming into Arcadia Street, and I thought, sure, it was all over. My pump continued to run for 3 weeks in a row just to get rid of that water. So I really feel that you ought to take into consideration that if something like this went forward, that the developers would be required to put in new piping and to get everything arranged so the existing abutters would not have to deal with any water coming into their homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak? Commissioners?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Commissioner LaValle.
thank you. If I'm not mistaken, this is probably maybe at least the third time that this particular property has been looked upon and plans have come before us. I remember the first time there was talk of compensatory storage and there was no applicable place for compensatory storage, so that person basically gave up. And the second time, there was no fill being put in. In essence, this property would probably be wet about 80% of the year. If I'm not mistaken, we went down there one time and there were ducks landing in the back of the property. If I'm not mistaken also, the last time they came with the project, there was an issue about sewage, and I believe they had, the proponent had some sort of injector system, Andy, if I'm not mistaken, because it was such a low area, and yet I didn't hear,
Yep.
I didn't hear any mention of that this time. So that, I'm very upset about this area, and I'd like the engineer to talk about that possibility of sewage being such a low point there, if it is in fact going to have an injector system being pumped up to the sewage.
can I add to that for a minute?
Go right ahead, Peter.
Okay.
Yeah, I certainly can. I'm familiar with the other proposals that is coming. It is true, there is not a way to compensate for a fill in this isolated land subject to flooding, and that's the reason that ultimately the last time the project was designed as a project to be on piles, essentially on stilts, so that it didn't eliminate storage that occurs on the lot. And you're correct, the lot is wet, and it would be wet a good deal of the time. As far as it was not an ejector system that we had, it was a gravity sewer system the last time, but because we were told that there were backups in the sewer system, we had a check valve, and we had storage tanks on site, which would serve to contain the sewage generated from these 4 units on site until such time as the backup relieved. It's my understanding, and maybe you could expound on this a little bit, that the client checked with Public Works and that they were no longer necessary. And I think that the feeling anyway is that the improvements in the drainage system resulted in improvements in the sewer backup issue as well. That's often the case, because what happens when the drainage is insufficient, the drainage goes down into the sewer, and then the sewer becomes lacking in capacity. So that was our understanding, and that's why we eliminated them. I said that in my initial presentation. If that's not the case, then maybe such a system needs to go back in. But it wasn't an injector system, it was just a storage system and then to be pumped out later.
And yet now you're telling us that it wouldn't be necessary
That's our understanding from the city, correct?
based on,
Yeah, you can't make that determination based on conversations with the city. It's a new development, so you need to improve existing conditions on your own. It's not up to the city you can't base your development on the city's improved conditions at the site. It's up to you.
I think it needs to be really determined whether it's surcharges or not. There is a reporting requirement for any sanitary sewer overflows, so hopefully whatever sanitary overflows the city is still experiencing, they're filing reports on it. I have personal knowledge from the late 80s down there, and I know it continued for a long time, and, it certainly would be something that the Wetlands Protection Act does address as far as a protected interest being prevention of pollution. So it's really a question that needs to be answered, whether the city's doing its due diligence and reporting as they should, perhaps talking to some of the neighbors. It's pretty obvious. The council says it still occurs, that manhole cover right at the end of Beverly Street, dancing up 6 or 8 inches. And I'm sure if it occurred during, at all, it would have occurred during the rain event on December 8th of 2014, where we had those 3 inches of rain. Yeah, but that is one of my concerns that, just based on a conversation, well, that doesn't really give me enough to make an informed decision. Perhaps talking with Kevin Brander at DEP, what he knows, or Todd Borchi at EPA, what he knows, where the city is under the judicial decree, Justice Department decree, or even talking to the engineers at CDM, what they're still looking at in that system. It may not be surcharging out of the manhole, it may be surcharging in the pipe, in the manhole, and it may be creating problems with other residents in the area. It's still, water's coming out of somebody's toilet in the house. It's not a good thing, and it's still pollution. So that would have to be overcome, in my opinion.
And not only that, you're referencing last time you were before the commission was when?
This received a permit in 2007.
2007, so 8 years ago, and you're saying there's phragmites on the site. When was the last time the wetlands were delineated? Is that even valid right now?
Well, the resources that we're talking about are not based on the vegetation, so.
But you said there were phragmites on site.
Right,
Doesn't that constitute bordering vegetated wetland?
no. This
It's
is
isolated,
It's
so,
isolated land subject.
so the Army Corps of Engineers has a new permit requirement that just came out, correct? So any Army Corps of Engineers permits you
I'm
obtained
not aware
before
of
are
any
no
new
longer
permit
valid?
requirement. There was quite a bit of time spent subsequent to 2007 on this project, dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers, with this notion of adjacency as far as wetlands are concerned and whether or not it constituted waters of the United States. We ultimately received a letter from the Army Corps of Engineers indicating that an Army Corps permit was not required to do what we wanted to do. Now,
On what date?
I'd have to go back and get the date for you.
I think the regs have changed since then. You need to look at those again, I'm pretty sure.
And these are regs that changed at when, what,
Within the last year.
really? I'm unaware of them, but I certainly can look into it. We can contact the Army Corps again.
I would recommend that.
Ms. Raponi?
Thank you, Joe. I hear the words sewage backup. I, for one, am a member of this committee, but I'd have a difficult time approving this construction in view of the fact that I was a victim in a different part of the city with a sewage backup. I shudder when I think back to the day it happened. Not for the same reason. There was problems with the pipes in the street. But I'd have difficulty voting in the affirmative for this construction, especially since I hear there's a possibility of raw sewage backups. There's nothing worse that can happen to a homeowner than a raw sewage backup. It ruined my entire finished basement. I had to redo the whole basement. It was the most horrific experience of my life, and I'm just in a difficult position to even think about having the abutters faced with the possibility of raw sewage backups. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Joe, I have a question, Joe.
Go ahead.
I noticed that at the both dwellings, you have 3 sewer lines. Will that help in any way? In front of each dwelling?
There's actually, in front of each unit, there's a sewer connection, but that connection connects to the city sewer.
Right. But there's 3 connections in front of each dwelling. This is what I'm reading.
No, there's a single water line that comes in, the front, if I recall. Excuse me, there's a water line on each side and a single sewer line that comes in the front of each dwelling. Two of them are water lines. The water connections are separate, the sewer is common.
Okay, all right.
So it's 2 water lines and then a common sewer line. You know, we certainly can look further into this. The information that we got was that the monies that had been spent, and I am very familiar with what the city of Revere has been doing since the early 90s on sewers. They had huge II analysis. We worked on a number of II removal projects with the implementation orders from the state in the 90s and in the 2000s, and it was our understanding that the problem was, if not solved, largely solved. You know, and that information came from Public Works, did it not?
Yeah, but this is a new development, so you're subject to meeting the requirements of the DEP stormwater standards, not to the maximum extent practicable. You have to meet them to the letter of the standards for this new development.
Right, but...
And you haven't demonstrated that.
Well, but we haven't, the way this is designed, it doesn't really change that, because we're putting a structure on stilts. That water is still going to go into this basin, and it's still going to dissipate into the ground, percolate into the ground, just the way it does now. One of the gentlemen got up and mentioned the water table being high. We're aware the water table's high here. That's why we never did a design that even suggested that a basement be put in. But the way this is designed, the water that falls on the land will continue to be contained on the land like it is now until it either transfer evaporates or percolates into the ground. So that's really no change. There's not imperviousness as far as these driveways are concerned. We're talking about doing them with crushed wash, crushed stone.
You know, I still don't see how that improves existing conditions, anything that you presented thus far. And that's one of the DEP stormwater standards.
Not that I know of. There's flow attenuation, and there's making up for infiltration on a certain basis. There's no new illicit discharge, but I don't know about a requirement that you approve.
Yeah, Commissioner Saboni is looking at it as new development, and I haven't seen anything that indicate that there was something existing here before which would classify it as redevelopment, because this is typically what we see. I know a lot of the projects you've probably worked on, projects I see in Chelsea, it's all redevelopment. There was something there before, they tear it down, they redevelop it, so they have to meet maximum extent practicable. But I'm not aware that there was anything here. Perhaps the Sanborn Atlases in 1914 and previous might show something was there, but I don't know for sure.
I'm not aware of anything, but these are existing building lots in the town.
But there's, I don't know the criteria, development, new development versus redevelopment. I don't know how it's defined, Peter.
Well, again, you can take a look at what we presented, but this doesn't change the situation as far as runoff is concerned. The water still doesn't run off the land. It still is contained within the land just like it is now. It may fall on this impervious surface, but when it does, it just goes in under the structure, and it's just the way it was before. This isn't the same situation as when you put a house in and it has a basement, and then now that becomes additional runoff.
Well, you are changing the characteristics to a certain extent, and simply you have roofs that weren't there before, so you can have a little bit quicker of a runoff.
Right, but I don't know how much difference that makes. The runoff is actually, I would say, you could argue that the runoff is quicker before you had the roof, because when it happens now, the runoff, the rain just falls in and that's it. Okay, now it has to go down the roof and down, and ultimately go into
So
the ground.
it's concentrated, that might make a difference, might not. I don't recall how the gutters are configured on the house, if there are gutters configured.
No, we haven't indicated gutters, and we're thinking that it would just drop on the ground, and as I say, when it drops on the ground, it would just have the opportunity to fill in underneath here. In fact, some of the wall loads we recorded actually indicate that there would be water or something on the site.
Looking at the property on the right, as I'm looking at it, if there are no gutters, certainly almost half the roof on the right would be falling on land. And if it's just running off the roof, it's going to cause erosion.
If that's a concern, I'm sure we can put some kind of a drip edge that would do that, or put a gutter on it, but I can't imagine that the amount of runoff, I mean, we're talking about just the pitch from essentially half of this roof. It would be this 42 feet by about 18 feet, would go in each direction, and, it's not a lot. If erosion is concerned, one of two things, either put a gravel drip edge on the ground or put gutters on it, but I just, I don't see that as a huge issue.
One of the other things I'm concerned about, and nobody else has brought it up, is climate change. And as you are aware, preliminary maps were issued that show an increase in the flood elevation that you use for the living floor elevation of the property. It's a change of 5 feet here.
Yeah,
And
The V zone may have changed 5 feet. This is in the A zone.
Andy, you were out of the room. The Army Corps regs have changed with regard to permitting, correct?
I don't know that. I know that they had written a letter to the Army Corps previously about
What they classify as jurisdictional wetlands
the 5,000 square feet.
has changed,
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
to my knowledge. And the last time this project was presented was in 2007, so.
Yeah, the Army Corps determination was after that.
Yeah, it was, I know it was
Yeah.
after 2007. I might have a copy of it with me.
I actually have a copy of it with me, I just don't have the date in my head.
Yeah, I made copies of the maps, Peter, and I've got one for you, and also what my concerns are, and I'm going to hand these out to the commission members.
Yeah, I
So-
think, are you talking about the land subject to coastal storm flowage?
Yeah, the firm map.
It's elevation 7 here.
On the proposed map, it's elevation 12.
I mean, I just got the most recent map, when you say the proposed, this is...
The preliminary maps of July 2014. Yeah, in fact, I had written Libby about that.
Well, she didn't mention anything to me about it, I'll sure look into it, but the Army Corps letter that we got is July of 2010.
I've got partial plans of the maps if you want to look at them, Peter.
Yeah.
You can have them, and you can have a copy of what I just handed out to the other commissioners. Right, that's the current zone.
Right.
Our property's down here, so you fall under this, and it's a little tough to read.
Yeah, that's elevation
It's
7.
7. So if you look at the new map, property down here. Elevation 12.
And when was this map proposed? Because
Preliminary July of 2014.
but not yet adopted.
No, the city's challenging it, but even though it's not adopted, it's something I feel that's worthwhile talking about with climate change, you know, as I accept it as fact, you know, whatever your own opinion is of it. And I think everything we can do now, in fact, one of the things I just was contacted by Save the Harbor, Save the Bay. You can have my other piece too, so you know what I gave. Yeah. It's what would I like to see changed? What initiatives would I like to see? I'd like to see the state building code changed to allow flood-proofing of residential structures. It's allowed for commercial structures, why not for residential structures? You know, if that could be done, it could help people who are living in the areas. I think it would help them on the flood insurance. It would also provide, one of the things that storm damage prevention is a protected interest of the Act. If everything's flooded, what type of relief are people either going to get? Emergency apparatus, not be able to get to the homes, not going to be able to get out. They allow them to invest in flood-proofing the house. They can still live close to the ocean, and they'd be able to survive some of these storms. You know, if the predictions come true 100 years from now, it's all going to be wiped out. Not going to be livable.
What we're doing here is one of the recommendations that they have, and that's we don't have breakaway panels even. We have it built on stilts up
Yes.
above the elevation. The map that I consulted on the elevation 7, I was just looking for the date, but I thought that that was the one that was dated in July of
No, it's not.
Okay, I can double check. It's the
Yes.
current one that's on their website. Is
Yeah, the current one that's on the website, you are correct. But these were distributed as they were going through the map changes, and that's the map, the one with the elevation 12 that the city is challenging. You know, the floodplain areas in Revere changed dramatically, and some areas along the V zones, as you mentioned, I'm sure this is happening in other communities, like a 12-foot or 13-foot change. You know, the extent of the flood areas in Revere, where the high school is not currently in a floodplain, will be in the land subject to coastal storm flowage, will require homes in those areas, will require flood insurance.
Well, I mean, if this is a concern and we think that the elevation 12 is what's operative, I can take a look at it with my client. We can always go higher. We're not subject to handicap access requirements for individual townhouses. So
Yep.
if that's really of concern, we had already said that we were going to elevation 9 anyway, and we were keeping our bottom of our lowest structural member at 7.5. So, and we were going up to 9.
Actually, the bottom of your lowest structural member should be a foot, shouldn't it be, above the base flood
That's in
elevation?
V zones.
Oh, that's only in V zones? I thought it was in all zones, the way I read the building code.
No, as far as I know, that's a requirement of a V zone. We can double check it. But I think the V zone requirement is to be a foot above the thing. But, and if that is a requirement, we certainly can do it. We're a ways away from a building permit.
And I know we can't see the land right now. You're lucky to see land any place right now in this
No, I don't
area.
think so.
Yeah, but no bordering vegetated wetlands?
No, because it's not connected to anything. It's isolated.
Okay.
And it was determined to be an isolated land subject to flooding back at the time. There was quite a bit of debate about that. And then there was quite a bit of debate about whether or not it met the Army Corps requirements, but the 2010 letter, they finally made a decision.
So I'm a little confused. You couldn't have a pond that's not connected to anything? Because definition, critical characteristics and boundary of a BVW, bordering vegetated wetland, are freshwater wetlands which border on creeks, rivers, streams, ponds, and lakes. So
Right.
each one of those would have necessarily an outlet or an inlet?
No, a pond wouldn't have to have an outlet or an inlet, but it would have to be 10,000 square feet in size under their definition. So we don't border a pond, and we don't.
Okay.
We don't have the stream, and when we're land subject to coastal storm flowage, we don't have fresh water.
And you wouldn't consider it a wet meadow or marsh? It looks pretty marshy with the Phragmites.
Yeah, it might be considered a marsh, but it's not, it's isolated. It's
Yeah,
not-
but I'm just trying to make a case of bordering vegetated wetlands because it requires replication. That's what I'm trying to do.
Honestly, the wetland survey was completed in 2007, so I don't see how that's even accurate at this time. And when I review recommendations for Phragmites removal, it's based on a report in 2000. It's 15 years old.
Well,
And the recommendations in here are no longer even utilized by anyone in the industry
Which?
for Phragmites removal.
Oh, yeah, that's still the way, I think.
I haven't seen that be
Cutting the
effective.
stalks and dabbing them with, I don't remember what we recommended, but I think it was cutting the stalks and dabbing them with Roundup. That's still how we try to do it. The other way is try to dig down 2 feet and get rid of the
Get
roots.
rid of everything.
Well, that's what you had, dig down
Yeah, and I
2
don't-
feet, but it should be 2 feet below below a specific elevation. You don't just dig down 2 feet.
Well, you do, because it's the Phragmites can be growing up the side of a hill.
That's not gonna remove the Phragmites, just digging down 2 feet of the Phragmites,
Well,
based on my experience.
I think what you say is somewhat true. The deeper you go, probably the better chance you have of eradicating it. But 2 feet is what's often used. The other method is cutting the stalks and dabbing them with Roundup, and that takes repeated treatment, and it's very hard to get rid of this stuff. I mean, I'm aware of that. The only other method that I know of is people have tried to use flamethrowers to burn it off. And those are still the methods that are used today, and unless there's some other method that,
I don't know of any method. I know Northeast Mosquito Control has proposed cutting them down and hitting them with Roundup type product.
yeah, and I can
Chairman.
tell you that that's,
What about that experiment that they're doing next to Kagan's? Who's doing that?
Oh, that's salt marsh restoration.
I thought that was getting rid of the
It
Phragmites.
is, but what they're doing in that case is they're actually bringing salt water to inundate the area.
Okay.
Because the Phragmites will only grow on the border of salt water. They won't grow, they'll grow where you have brackish water.
There's
but
a
not salt
good
water.
possibility that there might be success in getting rid of the Phragmites in this area, only because it is isolated. There's nothing else around it. If you can get it out of that one spot,
Could.
you probably have a better chance of keeping it out. On the other hand, I'm starting to get a recollection of the last time that we went there, and the back of this property was just inundated. There was basically a pond, and the irony is, if I'm not mistaken, when we were there, it was a dry period. I don't think there had been rain for 3-4 weeks. You know, and that's something that really troubled me about this particular location. It borders on whether it's a conservation issue or a health issue or something. The council made some very good points. Unfortunately, some of them are not germane to this body, and yet, on a conscious level, I just can't see families living in that particular area. And I have one just a question that, if you, are you the property owner, sir? I am. How long have you owned this property? About 4 months. I see. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr.
Anybody else?
May I say something?
Go ahead, Commissioner Camerata.
I think a lot of time and effort would put into these plans. Will they have the opportunity to come in with a better set of plans to satisfy?
That's up
The
to us.
abutters and
The options
everybody
we
else
can
involved?
take right now is we can approve an order of conditions as submitted. We can deny an order of conditions as submitted. We can give the opportunity to the proponent to ask for a continuance, come back, and address some of the concerns we raised.
So what you do about order of conditions? You already submitted, denied?
No, I haven't done anything. That's
Nothing.
up to the commission.
Right. Well, truthfully, I think they should have the opportunity to try to come back with a plan that would satisfy everybody. Seriously. I think they put an awful lot of time into, a lot of hard work and a lot of writing that was done, the plans, everything looks fantastic. So I think they ought to have the opportunity to come up.
So be your desire to continue the public hearing?
Yes, I make a motion.
I think we'd want to continue the public hearing anyway, because we'd like to have a little more opportunity to look into the information that we got on the sewer versus what the
Yes,
council
yep,
members have said.
okay.
And see, I mean, the way we've got this designed, they're not going to have basements, there's not going to be sewer backing up in their basements. And the other design was because it did surcharge, that we wouldn't discharge into the sewer to exacerbate the problem. I think we need to find out whether they still have a surcharge problem or not.
Okay.
Want to come here for a minute, sir? Want to come here? I want to show you something. I asked a question. I don't think I got the right answer.
Member Camerata has asked, placed a motion to continue. We don't have a second.
I'll second for a continuance.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to continue the public hearing. By Vincent Camerata, seconded by James Sarboni. I'm not going to be available the first Wednesday in April, so it would have to continue to May. So the date would be? Excuse me?
Can we get a site visit between now?
We can do that. Let's see what the date of the meeting would be first, and May 6th. That's the first Wednesday?
Yeah, first Wednesday is May 6th.
So if the first Wednesday is May 6th, so we could do a site visit on the 2nd? Saturday the 2nd? And the snow will be gone by then, I would presume?
Hopefully.
I hope so.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, voted in the affirmative.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Peter. And I'll let you know of, probably be 9 a.m., Peter, for the site visit.
Okay, yeah.
But I'll do that formally. Yep, that's fine. May 6th. Yes. And we'll do a site visit on the 2nd at 9 a.m. Oh, would you rather do a little later, Vinnie? Would you rather do the site visit a little later? The site visit. What time? 9 a.m. good for you, or would you want it too early? 9:30? 9:30? 10 o'clock, all right, 10 o'clock. May 2nd.
You have to bring a coffee.
Okay, that concludes business. Motion to adjourn?
I second the motion to adjourn.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Adjourned at 5:21.